Hi, and welcome to the Flex with Aaliyah. Today, I'm talking all about OCRWC 2024. And if you're not familiar, that stands for Obstacle Course Racing World Championships. It just took place October 4th, 5th, and 6th. And I have a guest on the show today, Jeannie, fabulous. And she's going to talk about her experience, what she liked, didn't like, stuff like that about her race weekend. So, welcome, Jeannie. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Aaliyah.
So, give me the juice. What can you tell me all about that weekend, the race weekend, OCRWC 2024?
Okay, well, I was signed up for the 3K on Friday, the 15K on Saturday, as well as the team race on Sunday. Started off on Friday. I actually got there Thursday and was able to kind of do like a walkthrough. And it was very well done. I actually thought the 3K course with all of the obstacles stacked at the end, it was a really good race. The hills in the beginning were crazy. They were extremely hard just because, well, first of all, the grade was so steep, but then like the footing was very loose. So it was like a sandy-ish type hill. So every time you walked, like you were losing footing. So that was probably, I think, the hardest part of the race was the start, was the incline. You came down and hit an obstacle, and then the second incline was just brutal, to the point where literally it was best to crawl, just because you're getting better footing by crawling. And then about halfway up through that, you can actually stand and get the rest of the way up too. So two big inclines. I made the mistake of pushing too hard and got my heart rate up way too high and started breathing too heavy, and I couldn't catch my breath. So when I came down to the obstacles, I got through the obstacles, but I was kind of bonking just because I was almost like hyperventilating. So I was a little bit nerve wracked from that. So, but overall, the race itself was it was I think, very well done, to tell you the truth. And I was happy about it. Finished with my band, and I came in seventh, and had to come up with a different plan for the 15K. So, and I'll tell you what, I felt so crappy during that 3K race that a part of me was like, oh, I don't even know if I want to do the 15K. Like, maybe I should just not do it and just save it for the team race, because I didn't want to let my teammates down. But then I'm like, okay, wait a second. You came all this way. You're not going to do, you have to give it a try. And so my whole goal on the 15K was literally just kind of just take it nice and slow and steady, and just one obstacle at a time, and keep my heart rate down. And I'll tell you what, that I actually was running better, and I was doing extremely well. I was super happy about how I was doing. And I was about a mile into where actually coming down to the 3K portion, where the 3K combined with the 15K. Still had my band. And I ended up dislocating my shoulder on drop zone. So I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And I was in prime spot to podium too. So I was pretty, I don't know, it's pretty bummed out. But I basically lashayed on the end of drop zone. And when I caught the bar to hit the bell, my arm just gave out, my shoulder gave out. So kind of fell to the ground, and luckily it went right back in. So they call it like a sublux dislocation or something. I don't know what the term is. But I stayed there for about 5-10 minutes, and I had some decent range of motion. I'm like, I need to try this again. I can't just like give up. And I tried it again. And I was lashing, and my arm just was hurting, and it felt like it was going to give out again too. So I was like, well, probably not smart to just wreck myself. So I ended up having to give up my band there, and I just ran down the hill and kind of ran through the rest of the obstacles and finished. So, but again, the race itself, despite getting hurt, I thought was well done. It was hard. It was challenging. The venue was beautiful. The weather was awesome. So, the race itself, I thought, was pretty awesome. I just wish I didn't get hurt. So, the team race, I didn't run. I couldn't run because my shoulder was swollen, and it was not a smart move. So, but it was kind of cool. I made a friend actually when I was on the 15K. We were, it was Erin. I can't remember her last name right now, but Erin was, running up, and we were kind of hitting these switchbacks, and we were basically at the same point together. And we did like the last maybe 15-20 minutes of the climb to the top together. And it was so nice to have like somebody there with you, and we were kind of talking back and forth, and we were both like, oh, thank God that we're like, we had someone, because it made the last part of the climb so much nicer. And she and I were just, I basically like staying kind of hip to hip throughout the race. I got a little bit ahead of her, and then she came up the drop zone, and that's where I was hurt, and she just passed and finished. So, but luckily she stepped in for me. So she has been doing the team race for the past couple of years. I think she said they took third place in the pro women's last year. And she was nice enough and awesome enough to basically step in for me. And then she ran with my two buddies in the co-ed open race, and they took third. So I stuck around and watched the race, which was, again, very just well done. I thought as a whole, I didn't go last year, but from what I heard from people that had gone both years, that the way they made the race this year was a lot better compared to last year's. It kind of felt like a true championship race, and very well done for their 10th year anniversary. So,
what do you think made it good? Because you said, oh, it was a good race. Like, what does that mean? Especially for those who didn't go, or they went last year and it wasn't as good. And some people have stepped away because Spartan took over.
Well, the obstacles, I think, in the race were well done. I know last year, a lot of people said they were bummed out about the 3K, that it was super easy. The obstacles, like there were hardly any that were challenging. This year was a different story, at least in my opinion, because again, when you come down in the 3K, you hit a portion at the very end where they're just stacked. It starts with Gibbons, and then it just keeps going into like a Skull Valley, into Force 5 rig. There's Ricochet. So all of these obstacles just hit at the end, which made it exciting because it was a nice place for everybody to kind of stand and watch. And you had a lot of people cheering you on. And it was definitely a challenging race. I hate going to races that aren't challenging. It's just like, oh, this was easy. So that was a challenging race. The 15K, same thing. Everything that was kind of done in the 15K, the inclines were extremely challenging, but once you got up to the first two that were in the 3K, it was a kind of a steady incline. So it wasn't like that brutal, like where all you're doing is just going uphill for like a mile and a half. This one kind of was a gradual up, and you knew when you got to the top two that it was just downhill from there. And again, they stacked their rigs, they stacked their obstacles well. It flowed well. There was one issue. It was not in my race, but I think it was in the 3K race during the earlier heats, where I know one of the sandbag carries got really, I guess, backed up because they didn't have enough sandbags. So in terms of planning, that was an obstacle. It was a sandbag carry. Well, that was not well planned. And what they ended up doing, because they started having racers coming and waiting for people to come down the hill, the sandbag carry up the hill was way too long for the amount of bags that they had. So I know during that race, they waited until I think all of the guys in, I'm not sure what age group it was like maybe the 30 to 39, but I think they waited until they got through and they held back the racers, and then they shortened the distance. So it went to like half the distance, so that therefore people weren't waiting. But that was one obstacle that I think was not planned well. Didn't make sense. And if you kind of thought about it with the amount of equipment they had and how far it was, it should have been a no-brainer that was not designed well. But really, besides that, I think it was designed very well. I've done a lot of races that are challenging, and I like I said, the venue itself was nice. The start and finish was right there, kind of like what it was back when it was at Stratton, and so it was like kind of like a nice venue as well too. Everybody could be there watching everything, and didn't have to like go to someplace far away for the start, even though it wasn't where the venue was. That was last year, I guess, a different part of the mountain. So yeah, so the obstacles were really good. I mean, it was very challenging. People were nice. The process of registration, getting your stuff, very well done, easy to understand, and Mammoth itself was just beautiful. So that's why I thought it was a really good race.
And were there similar people there that worked the OCRWC before Spartan bought it, like when you went to Stratton? So Rachel
was there. Rachel Ann, yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good, because you like seeing familiar faces, even though ownership changed. And I remember how big of an issue that was. And I myself was concerned about it. I was like, I don't know how that's going to go. And based on how the first year went, it didn't sound like it was as successful. Were there a lot of people? Because it seemed that they were giving a lot of registrations away. And, oh, you participated, you placed before here, you can sign up for free. And I felt like they were obviously really trying to get people to go, which is great because a race cannot function without people. But I was actually concerned that they were lacking participants.
Yeah. So again, I didn't go last year, so I couldn't compare it to last year. But I did ask some people that did go last year, and they thought that in terms of numbers, in terms of field, that it probably wasn't as big as it was last year, and even last year wasn't that big, because I know that they were comparing that to like Belgium, and there was a much bigger field in terms of a world championship in Belgium versus what you got at Mammoth. So number wise, I can't really myself compare from last year, but from what I've heard from other people talking, they kind of said that it seemed like there was less people this year than the previous. So I know though, I know I always track, who ends up, is in my age group because that's where I compete. And I know a couple of the top people were there as well from last year. So they came back and made the trek. But I think the second time of being in Mammoth, there was a lot of people that were kind of upset that it was there to begin with because it's a hard place to get to. So the second year being, they're like, I'm not doing that again, or there's no way I'm going to do that. And it kind of made them a little bit even more frustrated. So I know the big push, they came out with a big announcement saying that, number one, they're not going to have OCR World Championships next year, but that they will return the following year on the East Coast. So they're hoping to, I think, appease and get more people and make it an easier spot to get to, even though Mammoth is beautiful. But yes, in terms of trying to get there, I think that hurt numbers.
Yeah, you beat me to the punch. So I will talk about that change that I don't even know how I feel about it yet. But before we talk about that change and the changes that they are not doing an event in 2025, were there any new obstacles that you hadn't seen? Because they tend to usually recycle ones, but then bring a new one. So you have that. And then regarding the quantity of people, it also is a packed fall season in general. There was the new Midwest OCR race. Then the immediate weekend after was OCRWC. And then this week after OCRWC, there's the national event that's happening in the States, but there's also the big Croatia event that Spartan's putting on. And then obviously you have World's Toughest coming up, the point series for Savage. It's just like a cluster all together. So I'm also not surprised that maybe people had to cherry pick which events they were or were not going to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In terms of new obstacles, I would say they were primarily obstacles we've all seen in the past, but they did have one at the end, which was called Savage. It's not necessarily what we think of with Savage OCR, but it was called Savage. And it was a rig that forced people to lâcher. And I know in the past, Spartan hasn't done that. They haven't had obstacles where they're hard enough or far enough that you have to lâcher, but they actually forced that. That was the only way you're going to get through this rig at the very end. And that got a lot of people. And you saw a lot of first timers who have never lâchered before that were, practicing and trying to get that, and some were getting them. And it was kind of fun to watch because you could tell some people have never done that before. And that took them out of their comfort zone. So the last obstacle was definitely new. And it started off with, you probably could have, if you're good enough in terms of ninja jumping, you could have jumped the first bar and caught to the second bar. But there was like two lâchers that were probably, I'd say like maybe 4 feet, 5, like they weren't too far. But the very last one required, I think it was over 6 feet. If I had to guess, it was probably 6.5, 7 at the farthest. But it was a long lâcher and then the bell. So that last one there was something different. That, like I said, I liked seeing that because it was kind of up in the bar. And it definitely it made some people like, I've never done that before, and now I got to work on it. So Savage was one thing new. I can't really think of anything else, though, in that was striking in terms of like new, and this is neat. They still kept a lot of good obstacles like Ricochet and Valkyrie was in there, and Drop Zone is another one that's, hard. The Force 5 obstacles. So there's good stuff in there, but in terms of new, Savage was the only one new that I recognized.
And I did see some videos of it. It was almost people could monkey bar. I saw people monkey bar the first 2 bars and then lâcher the last bar. And there was a rig that they had in previous years. So in 2022, there was a rig that race ready. So Aaron and Sid helped, where you could lâcher to get through it quicker, or you could zigzag monkey bar it. But new in general, where it forces you to lâcher, but they have had it in the past where you could lâcher. Now that we've talked about what obstacles were there, your experience, we didn't really talk about your injury yet, but the big news that they released, and they actually are going to start selling tickets, which I'm surprised at, that there is no 2025 event. They're just skipping 2025. However, they're advertising and promoting a 2026 event in May and are beginning to sell tickets. I'm curious how those sales are going to go, because if they're not doing it, I would be hesitant without a specific date to sign up for it. One, because if it interferes with Frontline, I'm not going. Frontline, amazing race. Don't miss it. OCRWC, get your shit together and don't put it on the same day as Frontline. I hope they think ahead and consider other events that are going on. So what do you think about that news?
My honest opinion, I think it's shitty. I think that's Spartan right there. I think there's your first OCR. Before would never have done something like that. I said this is your pure Spartan influence. I think it's shitty to be asking people for money and thinking, hey, advertising and all this kind of stuff. There's so many times in the past where they've done things like this and have never come through or canceled or whatever it is, and then people don't get their money back. So beware. I'm just saying beware. I love OCR World Championships, but this is that Spartan shit that I don't like. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They are, of course, they're making it in a positive way, announcing it in a positive way. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I sure as hell am not going to go and put my money, because it's not even that cheap. I literally went in to try to see what the prices are, and they're still super expensive. So it's like the 15K is still like around $180. Yes. And I mean, all that Spartan fee stuff, it's all still in there. So like, I thought maybe if it was going to be like half the price, yeah, maybe that'd be worth it. But like, there's no way I'm going to spend close to $200, $300 like on races that I don't even know when it's going to be, where it's going to be. That's asking a lot. So I don't know. I think it's a stupid move. I think it looks bad. And I'm not sure exactly why they're doing it, but I'm sure that's Spartan right there.
Yeah, it is a weird move, very peculiar. I think obviously every business makes its own choice, but if they provided a little bit insight about why they weren't doing it, maybe it would ease some people, or maybe Obstacle Racing Media is going to do some digging and figure it out. But usually we still don't get any insight, because it's going to fizzle out. People sure might be excited when it comes back, but you're taking a year out. And they've been so consistent. Everybody loves OCRWC. We loved it when Adrian had it, and it got a little messy, as it does when there's any change. And this year, if certain things were a little bit better, I was hoping it was going to build or grow. I think moving to the East Coast is a nice decision wherever they go. It's just nice to have it change.
Yeah, I think what bothers me is that, like you said, they've had one for the past 10 years. This was their 10-year anniversary. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, we're taking a year off, which to me, now that Spartan owns it, they probably don't have that stuff planned yet. They don't know where it's going to be. They know what they want to have it in May or whatever it is. But I think all of a sudden now this race is going to go down on the list for Spartan. And I hate seeing that, because then that's what made this race so good, was that it was just like, it was the one race and it was, their priority, and it was so well done. And now that a big company has bought it, it can go wherever they want it to go. And if it's not going to be at the top anymore, then I think in the long run, it's just going to get kind of drowned with the others. So that's sad to think. I hope it doesn't happen. But again, I don't have, I'm sorry, but I don't have a very good opinion of Spartan. And I freaking got married in the Spartan race. Like, I loved Spartan years ago. Like, I literally, like, my wife and I went up on Palmerton and got married. And then over the years, they just changed, and kind of lost their values. And that's the races that I like to go to, where there's really good people with great values and characters, love their people. And you don't see that as much with Spartan. It's more about the dollar. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of even their prices sometimes are so steep. And I get it's a business, but you see smaller races charge less, still become. I mean, I don't know the smaller local businesses, what's going on with them behind the scenes, but if they are continuing to show up and have a good population, they're doing something right. And if you're going to charge that much, it better be the most fucking amazing race ever. But they don't have any clout now. They're losing that, and their rapport is suffering. Sure, you have the hard and true Spartaners. Spartaners, made that word up. Yep. And they will, no matter what, they will always go to a Spartan race. But that's because they like the status quo. You're always going to get X, Y, and Z, and that's the way it's going to be. Ooh, that rhymed. That was fun. Okay, so now we talked about that big news. Okay, the other big news is, Jeannie, oh my God, what was it like dislocating your elbow? Dislocate your shoulder?
yeah, it sucked. Shoulder. Yeah, it sucked. I mean, it was kind of like I don't know, coming down the hill and I was just feeling so good. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm coming down and I've gotten through all of these obstacles the day before, and literally, like, I was like, oh shit, that was not good. Like, I knew right when I was catching that bar, I'm like, what the heck? And then I fell down and I'm like, are you kidding me? But I don't know. What are you going to do? I mean, it happens, right? I'm 47 and this is the first time I actually got like hurt in a race. So I guess I can consider that lucky, but I mean, there's nothing else to it. It sucks. And I was bummed, but I was still there. You know what I mean? I was still able to finish the race and I was still able to watch my team, and injuries happen. So you can learn a lot from having injuries and setbacks. That's just what they are. They're just, times where you have to take a step back and keep working for what you want to do. So, but it sucked, and it sucks now because I was supposed to be down at nationals and, missing that as well too. But it is what it is. And it's just temporary. So.
Yeah, it is temporary. It sucks and it's sour. It's just this nasty taste in your mouth. Totally get it because I dislocated my elbow before I got to compete at the FIOS World. I always say FIOS, and it's like, what is it? FISO. I always say it like the internet. FIOS.
Yep. FISO. Yeah, and shit too. And then don't forget the year before when we stayed together in Belgium, you literally hurt your ankle. So, I mean, it was like you've had some major injuries happen for big races, and that sucks. So, but like you said, it is what it is. And you do what you can and you come back and, you just keep going.
Yeah, you roll with the punches. Have you ever dislocated your shoulder before?
No. Mm-mm. I haven't. I had a rotator tear 2 years ago. It's the same shoulder, so I was a little bit worried about that, but I've never dislocated. Thank goodness it was fast. Like it came out, and when I hit the ground, it went back in again. And I was like, ugh, because it hurt tremendously when it came out, but it didn't stay out for very long, where I know some people have dislocated. Did your elbow dislocate and stay out of place, or did it go back in?
No, it stayed out for about 2.5 hours. It was very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. At least mine didn't do that.
I think I was hoping it would just like fall back into place, but it did not. And I think it was lucky that yours popped back in. And that's what I was going to ask you, because I knew you had a previous shoulder injury. I was wondering if it was the same side, and do you think it was that somehow affected it or could have led to it?
I don't know, because I spent a couple months that year when I hurt my shoulder, obviously doing my exercises, my PT. I never had to have surgery on it, so I got it strong again. But I think it's my shitty technique, honestly. I think I think when I lache, I'm still not the best on laches, and sometimes I catch too under the bar rather in front, so then I don't have a little bit of a give in my elbows, and everything's just so straight. So I think it's shitty technique. I just got to get better at it, but it is what it is.
I think that's a good point, even though it wasn't really a point, but the shitty technique, a lot of people don't consider some of the work that has to go in. For the most part, we all are strong. We swing, we jump, we leap, but there's a baseline of foundation that sometimes we skip. And I'm not saying that you've skipped it, but I know what I've seen from people's training. They want to do all the fun stuff. And I know that firsthand from working with people. Ooh, I want to do that. I want to do that. It's like, well, we got to do this other stuff before we go with the cool things. Because if you go with the cool things, you're going to hurt yourself. And I see that a lot in Ninja Warrior because they're working on skills over and over and over again. But where's the strengthening? Where's the shoulder stability? And you have people who sure, obviously those things kind of get stronger over time, but there's going to be an incident where you don't know the wear and tear. And when you catch straight arm, so much force is coming down onto that shoulder joint, the ligaments, the tendons, the muscles. And in a race, when you're tired and you're like, oh my God, I hope I get it, there still has to be some muscle contraction that saves you. Otherwise, it's so much force.
And I think that's exactly what happened because, again, drop zone came. It was the obstacle right before the last, you were almost down the hill. You hit drop zone, and then you came into Gibbons and that whole series of obstacles again. And at that point, I was tired. You know what I mean? Like, I was tired, and I was, everything you just said there. So it's like, you're in those laches, and you're like, come on, just give me a little bit extra. And the technique is already kind of starting to go because you're, at mile 8 or 9 and had been up and down the mountain. So it is what it is. Like, I've been practicing. I just, there's always more room for improvement, and laches and some of those skills are things that I still need to definitely work on. So it is what it is. That's what helps it helps you to identify those things that you're like, okay, I need to work on this here and just to continuously improve. So
unfortunately, the best part of injury is realizing maybe a weakness you had or now have that you will work on that benefits you going forward. Like the shoulder stability work that you're going to do now is going to give you a bionic arm like my bionic elbow. We've talked about the race. We talked about your experience, some of the news that the race has coming up. Is there anything more you want to say about the race or your experience that weekend?
Yeah. People, community, still the best part of OCR. And again, you talked about the charity race. OCR Gives Back to Back Ministries was the charity race, and a lot of people were there. Steve McCullough was there. I love that guy. He is just incredible. Lionheart was there with there's just a lot of good people involved in OCR, and oftentimes we're asked what's the best part about it, and I think that's it right there. There's just so many good people that makes the weekend so fun because we all get together. Y'all are there supporting each other, get to see each other and visit. And it's like you're with your people. And so I think that was one of the best things is, again, going to, a place and getting to see everyone. And there's just so many good people around you. So even though there's business and there's, race stuff going on behind the scenes, but there's just so many good people doing good things there. So I enjoyed it tremendously. I definitely would go again for sure.
Community is huge. Events like this really bring us together because of what you go through, the successes, the struggles. We all understand it because we go through it together, maybe at different times. And that really links us competitors, athletes together, which is a really cool, unique experience. And I think all sports kind of have that. It's just very specific to the event you participate in.
I think so too, but I think OCR is just different because I've played a lot of sports too in college, and it's just so competitive though. But it's different, even though we're racing and we're competing against each other. Like
most people are genuinely happy when other people succeed. You know what I mean? Where you don't always see that in sports. Like, it's do what you must do to beat the other team or beat the other person. And I think that's what I like. It's just everybody is a common goal. You train your asses off, all season, and you come together for these big events, and everybody's just pretty thankful to be there and be around people that get it, and support each other. So
that's a good point. I think that would be from people having walked in your shoes before, struggling on an obstacle and then seeing someone get through it. You know exactly what that feels like. And if you're stuck, it's gut wrenching, but you're super excited when other people get through, and sometimes that motivates you. You're like, I'm gonna get through it now. It gives you that little extra grit and bite.
Even though I'm hurt right now, I still love this sport so much. And it's like, that's the hard part, is I want to just, when you're hurt, you want to get back to normal so that you can just start training again. But yeah, sometimes you take steps back, but it's definitely something that I want to keep doing as long as I possibly can, because it's become a big part of me. I mean, and the people too. So, like you, Aaliyah.
Oh, like me, thank you. And my big ass biceps, thank you.
Mine are bigger. No, but think about it. I met you at Strat.
Oh my God. So you guys want to know how Jeannie and I met? We will tell you the juicy details of how we met. Okay, so you go and then I'll embellish.
Well, I was at, what is that?
Lagaff.
I was stuck at Lagaff. I think I took my pants off even trying to get through that. That was a race where I was literally, I was up the top of the mountain in first place with my heat, and I was running so well, and I get stuck at this horrible obstacle. And I'm like defeated, because then people are starting to come through, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, there goes like my chances of podium and blah, blah, blah. But then I just kind of got slap happy because I was up there for like 45 minutes, an hour, and you were there, and you were coaching people through, and I didn't know you at the time. And I'm like, look at that badass over there with really big biceps. She has cool hair. But no, I remember you were giving advice, and you were giving people advice. And I asked you, I'm like, do you have any tips for me? And you were so freaking sweet. You were just like coaching me through it as best as you could. I think you stayed up there for as long as you possibly could. And then at the time, I think it was Chris was with you. And he's like, you got to get down the mountain, and we got to get to podiums because you were getting awards. And you left. And I ended up getting through that fucking obstacle, and I was ecstatic. I was so happy. Came running down the hill and ended up making podium myself, because not too many ended up getting through with 100%. So, and then I never forget, I met you after the race. I found you, and we talked a bunch, and I was just blown away by, again, like how much you cared to see people succeed, to not, give up, to try. And it was very genuine. And that's how you and I met. And that's how we, sparked up a friendship. And, but like, that's what you see in OCR. That's again, what makes OCR so special, is the people. But that's how we met. I think I had my pants on whenever we met.
You did. You were, okay. You eased me into meeting you. First, you had your pants on. So I did meet Jeannie clothed. And then slowly, she was not the only one. People started to take their pants off because the skin grips the poles better. And
I started that, though. That's my credit. I started that. I was the first one to take my pants off. And the next thing you know, there's like 10 girls with their pants off up on top of the mountain. I'm like, I fucking did this. Yes.
I feel like we had a discussion, because I had commented on the pants, and I was like, you either got to roll them up. And some people tried, but they're tight pants. They're not rolling up that far. That was such a cool moment to be up there with several women in your age group standing there in their underwear.
Yes, I thought it was awesome.
Like, that's some commitment. I've never seen that in any other sport, in any other race.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I got through it with my pants on, though, because I ended up getting cold, and I put my pants back on. So I guess that's not really like the magic, tip there, but it was still fun to see all these people with their pants off.
It was. It was.
But that's how we met. That was my version. What's yours?
That's pretty much my version, too. Just that you had your pants on at first, and then we talked about it, and then you wanted to commit to taking them off. My story is the same as yours. I was just hoping you were going to tell the world that you took your pants off. That's what I did. You did. You sure did. And you own that shit. Yes, you did.
I would fucking do it again if I had to.
Yeah, we
Just
do.
with better underwear next time. I think my outfit on underwear was not the best that day.
I mean, at least you had underwear on. Otherwise, you'd
Right?
definitely be up Schitt's Creek.
Right. I think I would have gotten banned from.
Nobody would have used that Lagaff lane after.
This is my lane. I wouldn't have to wait for retries.
Nope, definitely not. Well, Jeannie, thank you so much for being on the show. Do you have any teams or anybody you want to thank or give a shout out to?
Can I thank my wife, Emily?
Absolutely.
She is my number one fan. She's always the one that's my biggest supporter. And when she makes like stories about me on Facebook, she makes me sound awesome and wonderful when it's really not that big of a deal. But I love her so much. So yeah, big shout out to Emmy. And you guys as well too. So I appreciate you asking me to be on your podcast and allowing me to tell the world that my biceps are bigger than yours. That takes a lot of, to admit. So I appreciate that.
On that note, we're just going to cut Jeannie off. No, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure hearing your experience about OCRWC. And everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in to The Flex with Aaliyah today. Catch us next week. You could probably guess what we're going to talk about. It's going to be the national championships that are taking place the 12th and 13th. So stay tuned, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you later. Thank you so much. Bye.